I'm really happy to see all of you, the world top experts and leaders in cyber defense at our CyCon conference this year. The topic of the conference, over the horizon, is obviously not a random choice, but clearly indicates that the role of our scientific community together with our cyber defense leaders is not only to deal with the challenges today, but also address the challenges of tomorrow and together be ready to face the cyber threats as a coalition of like-minded nations. So the purpose of this conference is actually, it's very clear. I can't say it's, I would say it's completely different from, let's say, average research conference. And how is that? There is a real action going on in cyberspace. Malicious actors are very active, and these threats, they escalate, they grow exponentially over the coming years. And that means our cyber defense community really is there waiting for input from our research community. And that's why at this conference, we think the purpose of the conference is that here our research community and industry can present the latest research results to our cyber defenders and have a dialogue between defense community's needs and requirements and what our researchers can provide. So I hope every panel and every presentation will end or in the middle of all starts with a very important question. So what? We did the research. How is now our national cyber defense improving due to our effort? And at CCDCOE and NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, we also work in this direction every day. And our view, how we can support our cyber defenders most, together with all you, our scientific and industry partners, this is, has been very carefully thought through and continuously under discussion at the center. And for us, our main purpose as a Center of Excellence is that we support our nations and NATO to be able to face cyber threats as a coalition. In more practical terms, we are focusing our products and services and research on 5 focus areas, which are all related to national capability of operations. Firstly, capability to conduct cyber operations and activities based on a common framework. That means working on doctrines, concepts, standards, taxonomies, vocabulary, which would help our nations to improve their cyber defense more efficiently. Second, capability to conduct cyber operations in context of multi-domain operations. So how cyber domain can efficiently work together in synergy with other domains. And as you all know, there are continuous challenges because there are major differences between these domains. So the third capability to conduct cyber operations and activities in multinational cooperation, which is the most important thing we all focus on at NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence together with you. All our products and services are aimed to bring you together to facilitate the discussion and stimulate more engagement in actual, not only in research, but also in actual cyber defense activities. The fourth capability is capability to conduct cyber operations and activities in cooperation between civilian and military authorities. Just yesterday at Cyber Commander Forum, there was this excellent presentation by Poland and UK about exercise Baltic Mule coming up, which shows the real need in one particular area of activity where cooperation between military and civilian authorities in providing our national defense is a really key for success of our national defenses. And I really congratulate the nations involved for this initiative. And last but not least, our fifth capability is to support our nations in being able to conduct cyber operations and activities in cooperation with industry. And industry, everybody understands the major role of industry in cyber defense. And that's why when I look at our proceedings of this year of the conference, and on one of the first pages I see the list of our industry friends. I see there is a typo. Please excuse us. You see, it says CyCon 2024 sponsors. Well, sponsor is somebody who gives money for a good cause, but we talk about our industries as industry partners, because it's way beyond enabling a lot of participants to have a free ticket or free travel to conference. It's all about providing the contents, the real research results and product development results and information about new threats and opportunities that only industry can share with us. So we are very grateful for our industry partners, Fortinet, Microsoft, Palo Alto, Siemens, Delphi, Trendy, Elk Group, Silobreaker, and our technical sponsor IEEE for continuous support to provide the best possible contents to our participants. And while I have this book open already, I would love to start reading it, but we have other engagements here. But I just wanted to point out that those who are in here, may I have a show of hands, whose papers have been published in this book? Show your hands. Actually, my paper was rejected. Only one. Where are the rest of the authors? Oh, there. Yeah, you did your job. You are sleeping now. So for everybody to know, the competition was 1 out of 10. So 200 abstracts submitted, only 20 selected for the book. This kind of indicates how tough it is to come and present at CyCon, but this is all for the benefit of actual cyber defense and for your own success from this conference. And now, without further ado, I think it's time to let's speak the most important stakeholders of the conference. So, as I said, the conference is all about working towards better cybersecurity, cyber defense for our nations. And who is the most important stakeholder? Obviously, it is our cyber defender, our cyber warriors keeping us safe 24/7. And they are represented by, of course, civilian cybersecurity agencies, ministries of foreign affairs, but most importantly, in our context of cyber defense, they are our cyber commands. And we are so fortunate to have Cyber Commanders Forum every year, just the day before CyCon. So it was yesterday with very interesting presentations. And we are very grateful that 4 cyber commanders agreed to come today here and present their views on these recent developments at the following panel, which I personally think it's the most important panel of the conference, and not because I'm moderating, but because this brings our main stakeholders for all of your work. That means they will benefit from your research results. And please, may I invite Generals Kennedy, Akitsugu, Admiral Roca, General Duncan to the stage. And we will start discussing and analyzing what can we see in the program of CyCon this year. So I have this plan that, and sorry now, the moment to give the big applause. With what we thank our distinguished presenters for taking time out of their very busy schedules to share their thoughts with us. So I have this very practical plan that I will hand out agendas of the conference to our panelists, please.
Yeah.
Please. Here you go.
All right, thank you.
And I will ask only 2 questions from them. The first question is, when you look at the agenda and you have in mind all these enormous challenges and work that your cyber commands have to deal with, and you look at this agenda, could you please point out which of these presentations, panels and keynotes you find most relevant in providing support for your cyber command to solve the challenges you have at hand? And the second question will be now, in the same context, what is missing? Where do you see challenges of your cyber command which are not supported or discussed at the conference? And through that, I hope this will give some indication and support for our research community to think about your further future research directions in order to optimally support our cyber defenders. So, could we start, please? Let's start from this end. So the first question, what is most relevant?
Well, good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be at CyCon this year. I would like to thank you, Mart, and all his staff for this wonderful organizing this CyCon conference. I think it's an incredible conference, one of the best of the world. Well, regarding your question, Mart, which I consider more relevant, they're all very interesting and very well selected, but you have to choose one. The first one for today, I will choose one for each day. The first one for today will be at the strategic track. It will be the public and private cooperation regarding cyber threat intelligence. Why? Because cyberspace is more than 90% a private environment, and it's difficult for military and government services to protect, to defend, and to respond in this environment without the private partnership. We need to break silos. We need to break policy or legal barriers. We had to change our mentality. We had to make the necessary cultural change, which is the most difficult thing and the more important thing to do. We had to change from the cultural change from the need to know to the responsibility to share. We really have to believe on that. For tomorrow, it will be, I will choose, I'm from the Navy, so I will choose the capacity building. Capacity is, the main thing is about cybersecurity of the maritime community. Why? Because any modern society, any modern enterprise or business depends on safe and secure access to cyberspace and the maritime community as well. And from the Navy, I can tell you, all the warships has communication system, navigational system, platform system, combat system, and all depends on safe and secure access interconnected to cyberspace. If you have access to cyberspace, you will be just a sitting platform with any capability to combat. And finally, for Friday, I will choose cyber defense and strategic competition. Why? Because we are entering a new age. This is not an age of changes, it's a change of age. We are in the age of digital world, in the digital world. And all phases, you have competition, confrontation, crisis, or conflict. In these cyber domains, we are not in competition, we're in confrontation always in confrontation. And we need new capability. I'm not talking about capability for new technology, new material, but more important, new skills, new capability for the people, for our people. This is a human-centric domain, the cyberspace. And that's all.
Thank you very much. And I really like that in your choice, we see both general, high-level topics which are relevant to everybody, but also one specific to your own field, because I think this is what everybody understands, that it's general things are one thing, but cyber goes very deep into all fields of activities of our defense, and there are technical details relevant to everybody. So thank you very much, General Akitsugu.
Yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Major General Akitsugu Kimura, Commanding General of Japan Self-Defense Forces Cyber Defense Command. Thank you for the great opportunity for giving me to attending this panel discussion. Thank you. And my topic is cyber security by using AI. Japan is also developing AI using for cyber security. And the budget of Japanese Ministry of Defense for introducing AI in fiscal year 2024 is 498 million euros. And we are introducing AI using for AI for decision support, special social media research and analysis against adversaries' influence operation, identification of deviation from baseline through threat hunting, counter AI technology for ensuring AI's cybersecurity itself. So now, Japanese Ministry of Defense is trying to introduce AI for cybersecurity, and I'm looking forward to learning from NATO countries how to use AI for cybersecurity. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is really very focused, but on the other hand, we all understand that because with AI, we are facing probably the largest disruption of human history, not only in national defense, but also in all civilian fields. That is very good focus. At our NATO CCDCOE, we treat AI-related research also together with our academic partners. And one example is that our flagship exercise, Luck Shields, maybe you know, already 2 years, one of the blue teams, competing blue teams at the partner run has been AI-based blue team, which is developed by a consortium of our academic partners. So if you are related to AI research from different angles, then feel free to contact CCDCOE also and look for opportunities how to work together with our exercise Luck Shields on technical level, legal level, strategic communication level, and so on, where your research groups could get benefit from the data available through this massive exercise, but also contribute to better preparedness of our cyber defenders on the future involving AI-based tools. Thank you. General Duncan.
Thanks, Mart. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Major General Anna Duncan, and I am Australia's Cyber Commander. Recently established as we consider our geostrategic circumstances, so we've made a decision to reorganise, and it's still quite a new thing for our department, but we, like you, have been in the business of cybersecurity of our terrain for many years. So I'd like to start by saying I found the whole agenda interesting, so much so that I've come back for a second year. I was here last year. And I'm reminded as I sit here with fellow commanders and our staff in the audience that it's really important for us to interface with our partners, just like I think you expect us to be your partners. So in the Australian context, we consider industry a fundamental input to our capability. So not just our logistic systems, not just our kinetic systems, but you are actually part of our system to generate capability. Equally, learning and meeting with academia and research agencies. You may be aware that Australia, we're a long way away, but we have a member on Mart's team here at the CCDCOE, Mr. Jim Austin, and we invest so that we can learn, but also contribute. I think before I'm going to get to my what I think is important, because they're all important. But for all of us over the next few days, and I know you would have considered this in your workshops yesterday, the context from wherever you come from is really important when we're engaging with each other as true partners. So understanding the government of that partner nation, whether your industry, and its armed forces context, I think is very important. And to do that, you've got to look at the environment and threat envelope or potential threat envelope around that partner. Because that'll give you an understanding of their will to engage with you and what they need to navigate day in, day out. So Mart, to your question, what's the most relevant? I was really drawn yesterday in the actual workshop day, because I'm a military officer. I'm a career member of the profession of arms. So I'm about taking information, analysing it, synthesising it, and at the end of the day, my government asks men and women like me, you've got to do some things. So your activity on responsible cyber operations, taking the principles, legal and ethical considerations, I think we've got a lot to still navigate in our national context. What is our national legal framework, our national policy settings? And then how do we come together and team together to protect, to defend, or to do other things in cyber? National positions on international law and cyberspace. I think that session yesterday would have absolutely got to what I was trying to introduce to you. How do we understand each other better? I'm also interested in how do we use AI in the things that we've been doing for many years around cybersecurity from the perspective of, does it let us reinvest our workforce, which is our critical, absolutely critical ingredient to our military capability, to your nation's military capability in other things. Because notwithstanding all those fantastic bits of software and hardware that industry, academia helps us develop, we help develop, it's not 100% perfect. And unless you've got that cultural synthesis of a human in that loop, so I'm interested in the sessions where you're talking about AI and how it might contribute to the wonderful things we do in a technological perspective. And I look at that because at the end of the day, I've got to enable battleworthiness. I've got to make sure that commanders who have the fighter aircraft, the naval flotilla, the land-based effects can actually prosecute those because they've all got digital identities now. We're a digitised battle space. So how can I work with you to leverage AI to free up our workforce for other things? And fundamentally, your sessions on lessons. Any lesson to do with electromagnetic spectrum and cyberspace, on recent conflicts, on elections, they're really important for all of us to learn how to team. So thank you for your contributions. I did read the book last year. I will read it this year, and I look forward to the next the afternoon.
Thank you very much. And with your last point on lessons learned, lessons from different experiences, just yesterday we had this very interesting discussion with our Ukrainian colleagues where we thought that one of the CCDCOE's mission is also for our nations to support Ukraine in their fight against Russian invasion and support their readiness to be integrated into NATO and European Union in the future. But what we also discussed was that actually Ukrainians in cyberspace should teach us a lot, because they have experience that most of us don't have. And we had this discussion about setting up a new training program together with Ukraine and CCDCOE for all our nations about specific lessons learned on different topics like critical infrastructure defense against multi-domain attacks, where cyber attacks from Russian hackers are actually almost always part of a bigger operation, either in cognitive warfare, on information warfare, or then in multi-domain kinetic attacks in the other domains. So more lessons learned coming to you from CCDCOE together with our partners. Thank you very much. General Kennedy.
All right, thank you, Mart. First of all, thank you for letting me join you here on the panel, and to my fellow panelists, what they said. Back to you, Mart. Not just kidding. But no, really, as we think through this case, I don't think it could be more timely to think through the defensive aspects of how we ensure the domain that we leverage across our societies, not just for our military forces, like General Duncan mentioned. And if you think about just the economic value, the informational value, the connectivity that it brings together for partners and allies across the globe, the cyber domain is absolutely vital to almost every aspect of life in the 21st century. With that, it also creates a space for adversaries to seek advantage, whether that's in the information environment or by disrupting our information that we rely upon for daily activities as well as military activities. And so as a cyber commander, as I look forward to what potential conflict could be, I completely agree with Javier that we are currently in contact with the adversary daily, and so we must never lose that focus. But as we look forward to what is going to be the construct that will help us succeed as an allies and coalition, the first one is we need to have allies and partners. And that goes beyond the traditional nations partnerships, but also internal into our governments so that we're working across domestic authorities and the other ways that, like Anna mentioned, of how we are structured within our unique nations and where the authorities and the ability to have some initiative and posture ourselves within the cyber domain. But it also goes with the folks that are on the masthead behind us here about how does industry bring forward the capabilities and how do we integrate with their fabrics as we all operate within the cyber domain. The next portion is the building in resilience into our societies and systems, as well as resilience into our operating principles as commanders, as military commanders, as we build those out. And the last one is data-focused operations, and how do we do operations in military context that really understands the data, the information requirements we need to succeed, and how we keep them available to our operators and to our combatants as they are out on the fields, on the battlefields of the 21st century. So with that in mind, looking at the agenda, as we look at where our operators are, right now a lot of our operators are in the loop as far as, with the tools that are provided and the means that we have to operate within the domain, but I don't think that will be enough as we go forward. One of the unique characteristics as you look at military principles, mass is one of them. And in the past, it was generally understood that the big would eat the small. Well, as we go forward into the cyber domain, it's generally the fast that eats the slow. And as we look forward to some of the seminars that we're having, the AI with a practical application, because go do something, the practical application of how we bring that into our environments in a place that's fairly risk, we can accept the risk there because it's a defensive, and if we have the tools that take an action or the capability takes an action, we can likely, with an operator on the loop, reverse that action, but they can move at the speed. We could leverage the artificial intelligence capability that would come into our environments to prevent adversary activity. If we rely on our operators to recognize it, observe it, orient it, decide to do something, and then act upon that, likely we will have lost the initiative and our adversary may already be well into our environments or proceeded to remove the information or disrupted ourselves in what their intent was. So as I look at the agenda, I think that's the one. The other one is, I'll take two, everyone else did. The other thing that I would look at was the workshop yesterday of how we partner together during current competition as we are in contact with the adversary, but how we bring ourselves together now. And so the panel yesterday, the workshop that talked about with respect to how NATO is looking at this, I think would be one of the ones to say, okay, how can we learn from what kind of existing partnerships to get at the information sharing or the other kind of aspects that we need to make sure we're postured in a way that we can have that action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And just picking out this briefings, the data focus, I'm really happy to say to our scientific audience that together with our nations at our Lock Shields exercise, as you know, one of the largest and definitely most complex of cyber defense exercises in the world, because it addresses this whole government approach, then we have massive amount of labeled data of cyber incidents. Network traffic and reactions, which is I believe might be the most useful data set regarding for AI development and further analysis, and this traces back for more than 10 years now from Lock Shields exercise. So we have discussed with our nations and with our experts that this data should be more open to our research communities of our nations. So feel free, if you see some idea how this can be beneficial for your particular research, then feel free to contact the experts at CCDCOE, and together we should put this data also in use for our cyber defense. So thank you very much for this first round, and let's summarize. So clearly there are very relevant topics here at the conference, which is a very good thing to hear. And I would like to everybody to give a big applause to our chair of the conference, Sigurdur. Sigurdur, could you stand up for a moment? So Sigurdur is leading the team here. So Sigurdur, together with many other experts, are behind. Full year they have worked to put this best possible event together. And I would ask you to give the second big applause to those researchers and organizers of those panels and presentations that were just mentioned. Thank you very much. And now let's come to the second question. The second question, looking at the agenda, what is missing? And while our speakers will address that question, if I look at the time, it seems to me that we will have about 25 minutes for discussion with the audience after these presentations. So think about your questions. This is a rare opportunity where you can really get the best possible feedback on stakeholders' needs and requirements for your work. So, what is missing?
What is missing? Well, it's impossible. First, it's impossible to cover in one conference all the topics regarding cyberspace, because cyberspace has created a new digital world, a new reality. So it's impossible. But if you have to choose one, I will choose two. Well, I will choose two. The first one for next year or whatever. The first one is how you deterrence on the cyber domain, especially non-state actor or low or medium regional powers that have the capability, the intent, and maybe the opportunity to do some responsible actors on the cyberspace. You know that the barrier to enter in cyberspace domain is not so high. It's not so high. This is asymmetric, yes, where few people with few resources can make a lot of damage to a lot of people. So we need to create some mechanism to impose high costs to these bad actors. And the second one that I would like to hear is how you build the team that is needed to play this sport. This sport is to protect and defend our cyberspace, our society, because we all rely on cyberspace, and where they are not only our system, our networks, they are our values, our freedom, our rights. No? So you need to protect all the chains, all the ecosystem through the weakest link. You need to feel everyone to be an important player of this team. I'm talking about small industries. Very small industry, very small business, citizens, schools, not only big academia, universities. So that's the one. How do you bring all together to this, because this is a team sport.
Thank you very much. And I really hope that after these 3 years, one potential team is very well built to support our nations collectively. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So my topic is data-centric platform. I don't know exactly is it including your theme or not, but I'm very interested in the data-centric platform for cybersecurity. My mission is mission assurance of cyberspace for multi-domain operation. And my responsibility is wider and wider day by day, as you know. Because initially, my responsibility was only the defense information infrastructure, that is core network and systems of Ministry of Defense and Japan Self-Defense Force. But as you know now, critical infrastructure is very important for not only the cybersecurity, but also conducting multi-domain operations. And supply chain risk management is also very important. And cybersecurity for space is also very important. So my responsibility is wider and wider day by day. And I would like to ask you, is it possible to accomplish the mission without data-centric platform for cybersecurity that integrate, synchronize, and visualize the data to conduct situational awareness and support decision-making? So I would like to learn from NATO CCDCOE how to develop such kinds of data-centric platform for cybersecurity. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And because the last question was towards CCDCOE, then talking about the way CCDCOE could address this question is just a number. During this first 4 months of this year, we used more external support in terms of man-hours than we have at the center internally. So more people and friends and partners from outside contributed to our projects than we could put there ourselves. So this is a way at CCDCOE we serve our nations together with our academic and industry and public sector partners to build up teams to solve issues like data-centric platform, for example. Thank you very much. Anna.
Thank you. There's many things that need to be looked at, and I echo what Javier and Aki have said to date. For our context, I think there may be something moving forward in what are the synergies between the cyber domain, which in our national context we define as cyberspace and the electromagnetic spectrum, and space, and the space domain, which we define via geography. But essentially the workforce that will produce effects, defend, protect in cyber and space are arguably very similar. There is that common thread of the electromagnetic spectrum to both domains. There is that common reality that there is the opportunity to learn day by day in industry's application of effects in those two domains. Civilian auxiliary use, how do we harness them? How do we interest them? Crowdsourcing is a big thing, particularly when you don't have, and we never will have, enough workforce. What are the practical realities between space and cyber from a worthiness perspective for national civilian use, essential services, as well as in extremis military use? So I'd say I think there is a growing convergence in the similarities between space and cyber. What would be your view? And then I'd like to offer a second one, if that's okay. And I think Javier touched on it. And that is, there seemed to be a little bit of an absence of discussion, very tech-focused, which is fantastic. But what about workforce? What about all of our national contexts around how we generate enough STEM workforce, enough cyber-aware individuals? I think for most of our national strategies, certainly for the countries here, at the heart of cybersecurity is an individual. And then we say that individual must be able to protect their own terrain, their own computer, their own phone. No one's going to help you do that. Then industry wraparound in the onion layer. Well, industry also needs to be able to protect itself, which is why it invests so heavily in its cybersecurity and data security. And then as almost the last layer is government intervention, and in extremis military intervention in all of our contracts as I've been able to study. So workforce, what might be the common skills framework? Because what I'm interested in is, instead of taking 30 years to grow someone like me, why couldn't the Australian military decide to bring an industry expert in to do what I do? Because it's different. Training frameworks, like Javier mentioned, and at the end of the day, workforce brings speed to capability for all of us. So I am interested in the psychology about how the effects of our people working in cyber. There are many that are saying a combatant for cyber doesn't need the same skills as other combatants. I'm not quite sure I actually agree with that, particularly when you're talking about needing to have a wraparound around a deployed warship or a forward operating base or a forward air base. So I think that my second ask would be, what's the discussion we need to have around workforce?
Thank you very much. And that was one provocative question. How can somebody from industry replace you and do the same thing you do? Because similar discussions I have had with several cyber commanders on the question, like, if you need a cyber officer, is it easier to train a cyber expert into a cyber officer or to train an officer into a cyber officer? And it seems to me that general consensus seems to be that it's easier to take an officer, a trained leader, into a cyber, to know cyber enough to operate as a cyber officer and cyber commander. It's much more difficult to take an IT specialist, a cyber expert, and train him to be a true leader for the cyber operation. But I would really be interested to see some research and way forward indicated by our research community how to deal with these challenges. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Mart. Thank you, Mart. I think I want to riff on this point real quick, and then I'll talk to my point. I think as you structure that about, how do we bring civilian expertise in, I think there's roles that we should carve out where maybe they have commissions or warrants, and that they come in and serve in our force. I wouldn't replace General Duncan, but I wouldn't necessarily have someone next to her that might be her technical director or something like that, that has a rank and the authorities that go with that, that can bring that expertise in while they're in that position. So I think there's some nuance there that we could have. With respect to the area that I would ask that potential to take a look at and think of how we grow this for next year in the research is kind of integrating all three of the parts here of my fellow general officers to the discussion about command and control. How do we train and exercise to these capabilities? The same thing for, as we're bringing them out, how do we do the training? And the key aspect that I would like is how do we build environments to do that training? So and integrate those live, virtual, and constructive environments that we can, obviously our virtual world would mainly sit there, but how do we integrate that across domain? As we think through of how that goes, whether it's space domain, air, sea, undersea, land, how do we do that training activity so our operators understand the importance of what they're doing and then the speed and agility necessary to integrate with the other domain effects underneath high stress. And underneath a situation where it's not enough to do the right thing in the right way, but you got to do it the first time when you're under that kind of pressure of a combat environment. And I think that is the key aspect of something that we could look as we dub that out. We've taken some steps in that, but it's a lot of times for folks that have done exercises in this way, it's a lot of white carding. So we kind of tabletop it and bring the effect in at what we think is the right timing. We need to kind of step past that as much as possible to show the interplay of the data, the interplay of the lack of data, and then what our operators can actually do to prevent that or to have an impact on the adversary. No, that's not the point of this conference, but always thinking that way as we go forward. But I think that's an area that technology can help us here as we move forward. And that's for the higher end. For the lower end, it's how do we take these tools that are developed and have environments that we can do individual kind of key knowledge, skills, and abilities on the actual capability in a modular way that is in an industrial process where we have a cohort of a class that comes together in 20 to 25 individuals and go through these week-long process. How do we build environments that allow folks to come through paced with mentorship through that? And I think that's the agile way that we really get to some of this workforce development and talent. But we need the environment that scales and can bring these capabilities in quickly. As we go forward. So that's one of the areas I think that the research community and the academic community can help us.
Thank you very much. And just one remark, what kind of summary I see here is space was mentioned several times and space cybersecurity. And as you know, NATO has a space center of excellence in France. And we have discussed with the director several times closer cooperation, but now I see obviously that for the next CyCon next year, we should invite Space COE also participate and organize discussions on space cybersecurity. And regarding the training environments, at our Luxhiel's exercise, we are so fortunate that the organizing team of the exercise is around 500 people. Out of that, about 30 are our CCDCOE staff members. So more than 90% of organizers come from academic circles, from industry, from our nations and armed forces. And may I have a show of hands? Who of you have been members of Luxhiel's organizing team? A lot of friends here. Thank you very much. So let's give them a big applause for continuous support to our collective training. Thank you. And with that, we have done our rounds of questions, and now we have about 20 minutes for you to ask your questions. So, who would like to go first? Do we have a microphone? Here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Davide Manganaro from the Italian Cyberspace Operations Command. Since I have this very distinguished panel about military commanders, I take the occasion just to make a question about the human resources. So I think the critical topics is about the military people. They are very experienced and so are attracted by quite high salary from the industry, whatever. So did you specifically experimented something or a combination of measures to keep these people inside the military? For example, raising the salaries, or for example, introducing some mandatory service periods? Or do you think that perhaps it's okay if they move to the national industry because perhaps you are already in the same team, so it is not a big issue, let's say? So, and which one of these measures do you think is more effective? Thank you.
Feel free.
All right, I'll take a stab. I get to go first. All right. So one of my former roles, I was the career field manager for the United States Air Force's cyber communications career fields, officer enlisted and civilians. And as we looked at this on the uniform side, a lot of times the end of service, the pace of military life, I think, is more of the challenge. The money is a thing, but sometimes the pace of military life is a challenge. What I mean by that is moving around, having uproot families. That seemed to be one of the more critical aspects. The thing that resonated the greatest was the mission. And so the question for us is like, how do we potentially balance those two dynamics? And so one of the ways is extended periods on the mission. So we look for folks that are in for specific on the cyber forces. If they're in that area, is there a way to do back-to-back tours within? It helps our readiness, and it also lets the operators do what they really enjoy doing. These are initiatives. I don't have great empirical data to tell that was effective or not. The other approach that we had is making different categories of service. So in the United States system, for uniform service, we have the active duty, which is traditional to what most nations have. We also have a reserve component and a guard component. The reserve component generally augments active duty units, and the guard component is aligned to one of our 54 states and territories. And that gives a much more stability for the family life on the guard side. The reserve component still can have some pretty significant dynamics, but there's more control to the service member for that kind of capability. The other aspect that we look is transitioning into civilian opportunities. And so if we make that easier to go, and I'm not naive, aligning some incentives as we go through for someone's career, as we go forward with an expected and longer service commitment is also another lever that we pull. So I think the answer is it's a combination of all of those things. The one that we're looking at is how easy is it for someone to change their status. So go out into the corporate sector and then maybe come back into a civilian role, make that really, really simple. We haven't yet broken the code of how to bring them back into uniform after a break in service. We have 1Z, 2Z examples, but we haven't really broken that code. But I think it's a combination of all things, and with an underlying, the mission is deeply impactful and the reason we all serve. Just mission alignment, though, isn't going to get us home. I think as leaders, we realize that, and so we have to align some of the other incentives to maintain our workforce.
I'm going to give you another point of view. I have been in the Cyber Command, serving in the Cyber Command for almost 5 years, and most of the people who's already left our Cyber Command is not for money. Only a few of them because they are so good that they gave a whole amount of money and they leave. But most of them, they leave because they don't get the recognition, the status that the military, they think they deserve. I am going to explain why, because they come through the services, to the Army, conventional service, Army, Navy, Air Force. And the Army, Navy, Air Force are set to provide soldiers, sailors, and airmen. no cyber warriors. So the career, the evaluation process is not meant to recognize their service. So I have seen when they got to evaluate with their mates from other services, they go down in the recognition. So they get disappointment, and some of them they leave because they have an offer over there. But most of them is because of that. So that's the reason why I'm telling always I'm fighting with the Army, Navy service, and Air Force. We had to get the same status, military status, to the data scientists, the computer, the cyber operator, than we have to the pilots or to the sailors.
May I follow up to this? So have Spain taken some steps to establish this career path and way to recognize good people in cyber?
Yes, we are trying to do that. We are trying. It's not easy because, but we are trying to make a full career in the cyber domain. So you enter working in the cyber domain and you finish your military career in the cyber domain, because this is not a specialty. It's not that you can learn in 1 year or 2 year course be the rest of your life with this knowledge, because it will be obsolete. So it's a full career. You have to be learning, relearning. So a full career. When you get lieutenant, and you get colonel, or you got, we are trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I want to introduce Japanese effort. So the first one is salary up, 60%, 16% of salary up from this April. The second one,
good for Japanese soldiers.
Congratulations. And the second one is to up the motivation. So we invest our cyber partners a lot of money, and we enter the school of cyber security course. That is the second effort. And the third one is now I ordered my cyber partners to conduct the mission-oriented training and education. It means that what can you do for national cyber security, and what should you do for accomplishing your mission? So my cyber partner is now understanding what is your importance for cyber security, and they have the high motivation to improve their cyber skills. So that is my 3 efforts to retain cyber partners in Japan Self-Defense Force. That's all. Thank you.
I can answer or we can take another question.
No, please, because I know this workforce has been always a big focus for Australia.
Perfect.
So is there something you could share about your efforts?
Definitely. Thanks, Colonel. It's a really important question. Isn't it interesting that some armed forces have decided to create a new branch? So, for example, in the US, there is a 6th branch now, a Space Force. In Australia, in our context, we are looking at recruiting and retention. So it's one thing to bring a person in, but then how do you keep them? Or if they go, how do you make the door swing open? Much more easier to come back in than it was, say, 15 years ago. So it's recruiting the person, then keeping the person. So we talk about an employee value proposition. Salary is not what extrinsically motivates people to serve in your civilian service or in your armed service. And we've done some studies on that. So what we are doing, to talk to what Javier mentioned, is we have got a status now. The Space and Cyber Force has a status gifted to it by our CHOD and our Secretary of Defence, that it's service-like. So we're not a new branch. We only have a Navy, Army and Air Force, but we are talking about the Space and Cyber Force as service-like. So what does that mean? So we now have work groups. The services, as was mentioned, create sailors, soldiers and aviators in our context, but now the Chief of the Space and Cyber First Force is responsible for this point forward. If you do communications, if you do cyber warfare, your workgroup future design and what you're doing is done by a different service chief. That's a very new decision. We also now do the training. The services no longer do the training. So this trainings come into our part of the organisation. So our people are now seeing, hey, I want more of that. They still have to join the Navy, Army and the Air Force, but now they've got the structures. They've got a career management agency now, and we're letting people opt in. I want to do this. I don't want to be an infantryman anymore. I want to be a space and cyber officer or enlisted, but we're also letting them opt out and go back if they want. Now, I know it sounds great. There's a little bit of work that needs to go behind it, but we are treating it very differently. The other thing we're doing is we've moved from being a demand-focused military. If you want to join the military, the Australian Defence Force, we demand you do this, to a supply-focused, recruiting and retention-focused. Our people want that. Okay. Australian citizens want that to join up. Okay. We've changed our medical standards. We're looking at all sorts of ways of bringing people under special categories. We've changed the reasons why we would medically discharge people before. We're keeping a lot more people in. So you've got to look at the total ecosystem, and I think you can leverage a lot from what industry does too.
Oh, that's really interesting. That means that your Space and Cyber Force moves towards the direction of startups and IT industry, which is very kind of people-centric and tries to maximize the benefit each individual can give to the organization or the country. Excellent. Thank you very much for these insights. I saw another question over there, please. And please wait the micro.
My question comes from 50 years of experience in armed forces. So I went a long way, and listening to the way you address us, I'm from the bottom layer, trying to bring the things on the road which you addressed. I realized that probably a fundamental change happened. I would like you to comment on that. When I was a young lieutenant, we sat with our commanding officers. The situation was different. We had officers' clubs, and we talked, and we were pretty fast in solving problems by just bridging the gap between the ones who do it and the ones who want things to be done. I realize now you experience the world now more through studies, through some intermediate bodies. Could you imagine to reshape your time schedules to leave more of that work to the able chiefs of staff, which did it in the earlier times, and embrace more a communication that bridges the gap between the commanding and the executing layer?
So thank you. I understand this question is a little bit more detailed question about the same workforce and commanding specifics of Cyberforce. So may I interpret it in a way, so do you see some specific aspects, additionally what was said before, in working with in Cyberforce?
I'll take a stab. I think we may have given you the wrong impression. Because what the communication does is I think we have flatter comms than when, sir, thank you for your service. I haven't done 50, but in the 34 years that I've been in, there is more access now to the senior layer and the command layer than there was when I was lieutenant as we go forward. And I think that is one of the operational advantages that we have. So for the teams that execute operations within our headquarters, and we're a numbered Air Force of 49,000 people. For the teams that are executing on the cyber side, they have their 05 level leadership, and the 03s and the senior NCOs they lead have weekly contact if they need it with my level or the 1-star level or the colonels that are running their task force or the 05s or the 04s. So I think that structure is set there. One thing to your point, though, that I think is the capabilities needed to solve their problems require a larger enterprise now to get that to them. I think before we might have had the tactical challenges that we were faced We largely had the kit I think we needed, or we could see where to get it. Now the tactical challenges that to solve these AI challenges, I don't think I have that native in my force, because the expertise that we require sits in this room and some of the researchers, and gaining them that access, I think, sir, to your point, we could help knit those kinds of things together. But I think the reach is there to our level, at least that's my experience.
Thank you very much. And maybe if you don't have anything urgent to add, maybe we jump to the next question. Thank you. And here is the next question. The microphone, please.
Goldman's 5G security expert. I have a question for Akitsugu-san. And you mentioned procurement and partnership with public and private companies. So public and private companies, they serve normal people, and usually their goal is best effort services. Now, requirements coming from military are slightly different. So what are your thoughts on bridging this gap?
Thank you for the great question. So Japan was struggling to orchestrate the effort between private sector and official sectors. And Japanese government already decided to set the security clearance in private sectors. So now we can start to discuss more deeply with private sectors. That is the first effort for Japan. And second effort is, of course, there is a gap to understand what kind of capability to build and what kind of education to conduct for military cybersecurity personnel. So we are trying to discuss not only the Japanese private sectors, but also the foreign countries' private sectors, because they already have the experience of collaboration with official sectors. So we learn from them. Of course, NATO CCDCOE, we will learn from yours. And we are creating the best way to create the good relationship with private sectors. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else would like to add something on that topic? If no, then we have, I think, time for at least one more question, and it's coming over there.
Good morning. Are you ready to use lethal autonomous weapon systems? Thank you.
So the question was, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Are you ready to use
autonomous weapon systems. So the question about autonomous weapon systems, and I would bring it to the cyber world, because my career has been last 5 years developing unmanned ground vehicles and being heavily engaged in ethical and legal discussions on how to use systems with autonomous functions on the battlefield. But this is not the conference to discuss it on a general level. If we look now using autonomous cyber defense, cyber attack systems in cyberspace, I think this is very specific for us. So how far with this autonomy of AI can we go, if that was the question? So, your views on that?
I'll go. For the offensive side, no. I think the policy, the legal frameworks, the technology, understanding how we are going to control that, execute that, the work to be done. On the defensive side, I think we're ready to take that on, because as I mentioned earlier, I think the risk framework is different. It's within our environment, and mistakes or actions that we don't align with our scheme of maneuver, I think we could adapt and set that in place. I think we're ready to take it on, but we need the training, the environment, and the understanding of the capability to follow. If we were presented something within my command tomorrow, we would have to step through that certification, validation process for the technology as well as the operators that are going to be on the loop when they do that.
I'd say that we can learn some lessons about what we're doing already in cybersecurity, but equally in Australia, same policy settings as the generals mentioned. We've got a lot to learn still. So we've got it in a protection sense, system sense, cybersecurity. What then if you're going to do something different in a defensive cyber way? And equally, we're working with a variety of nations and our policy on anything beyond that, as was intimated in the question.
Well, I will say that there are many challenges and risks of using new technology like autonomous system or artificial intelligence, but that happens during the history of the humanity. With a new technology, there's always fear, risk, challenge, but we have to surpass that. In this century, artificial intelligence like the electricity. Last year, when we invented electricity, there were fear as well, but we were able to manage that. And I think right now the policy is that has to be man on the loop right now with autonomous combat system, but in the future, the main risk of not using artificial intelligence is not using that, because bad actors will use artificial intelligence, and we had to defend against artificial intelligence. We had to use it as well.
We must set the rule at first, as you know. So Japanese government and Ministry of Defense is also always discussing with US, and we must set the rules based on the international humanitarian law. That is the first step. So we must discuss about it.
Thank you very much. And I can't hold me back because of my background from robotics. I just give you my personal views that the question about meaningful human control in the other domains. Now we talk about air robotics, ground robotics, the meaningful human control and how to define it. My personal feeling is we can discuss the level of autonomy against shooting down the missiles or shooting adversaries' tanks, but when directly killing people, then humans should always stay in loop, and this never should be triggered by an AI-based system. But with that, I think it's time to conclude this panel, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. And let's thank all our great participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.